Oh.
And she got to go home today and time for me to rest back, take a quick shower, and get her, so I'm really not all together.
Yeah.
But,
Well, we're glad you're here.
kind of a rough couple of weeks. I haven't had a lot of sleep either.
Well, we're going to go ahead and get started to honor everybody's time. We have a number of people that are online. Right now there's about 15 or so. My name is Ken Schlenker, and I am the Director of Chaplaincy Programs for Grace School of Theology, and also the President and Founder of CareForce US, which is a nonprofit that's been around for well over a decade. We are in a collaboration with Grace School of Theology to bring chaplaincy to the school in an accredited program for both undergrad and graduate. Programs. In fact, the paperwork for the accreditation is going to be submitted next week, and we're going to have about 30 to 45 days or so, and it will be fully accredited with the classes beginning in the summer session. So every month we are doing topical seminars that are free, and we're doing them here live at the World Headquarter campus, and we're also streaming this live on Facebook on both Grace's site and also our site for CareForce, on top of our Blue Jean system, which allows for interactivity and synchronous learning within the school. Our organization has about 60 different classes that we're bringing in to Grace for practical training on different ministry skill sets like crisis intervention, suicide, and things of that nature. So this particular talk is going to be on what's called suicide talk, and it's around the topic of should we talk about suicide. Suicide talk is part of Living Works. Living Works provides the international standard of suicide intervention training. And I'm a master trainer for them on a number of different classes, one of which is called ASSIST, which is Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. Suicide talk just brings up the topic of suicide for individuals to be able to get over the stigma of talking about it. The next class is something called Safe Talk, which is connecting somebody who is a person at risk with somebody who can actually do an intervention to help them on the pathways of living. That class is ASSIST, which is Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, which we are teaching next month here. And then there's another class for case management for clinicians and stuff called Suicide to Hope, which is recovery and growth afterwards and stuff. So the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training is going to be hosted here. It's a live class from 8 to 5 on the 22nd and 23rd. You can go to this link here, and we'll be sending out to everybody here and that registered online links to all of this as well. But if you go to bit.ly/CareForceUS, that will take you to all of our classes that we're going to be hosting here live through June and July timeframe, and we will be adding to that all the free topical stuff that we'll be doing here as well. Now, for those of you that pre-registered for the event or that are here, there's some handouts that you'll be able to utilize through this. The exploration worksheet, which you'll want to have available. We're going to have your helpers in community and also a feedback form. When we get done with this event, you will submit the feedback form to us, and we can provide a certificate of completion to you, along with some additional handouts that will be mentioned during this class. And you could look at the list that's here. We can only send that to you, though, by receiving your feedback form. For those of you that are online and this is your first time with Grace School of Theology and you're in the Blue Jean system, we have technology that allows us to do synchronous learning Grace is in 35 different countries, and they teach in over 7 different languages. So we literally have people from all over the world that are registered and watching this currently. So if you have questions as we go through this and you want to allow us to hear you, you have to hold your space bar down. It's like a push to talk. And when you release your space bar, you're done talking. But we can't hear you unless you hold the space bar down because we've muted everybody that's online so that we don't get feedback as a result of the system. The other thing is we're going to take a few minutes to kind of get to know everybody. And in order to do that, we use some interactive technology that I need for those of you that are online right now to please open up another browser at this address, pollev.com/Ken Schlenker 546. I'll wait for you to open up this tab for a few minutes. And what this tab will allow you to do, we're going to be having some interactive polling that you can respond wherever you're at, anywhere in the world. And your results are going to show up here inside of our PowerPoint in our presentation. So if everybody can just take a few minutes to please open up the link here at pollev.com/Ken Schlenker 546. And one of the first questions is click on the link anywhere inside there and it will display, as you can see, we already have somebody up here in Alaska. This is showing us where you're at all over the world right now. We did have some people register in Abu Dhabi, in Venezuela, in the Philippines, in Spain. So you can see we've got people kind of all over the world. So we'll give that just a few minutes for everybody else to participate. So we're kind of spread out across the United States, and you notice there's a couple of people out here as well. Pretty cool technology, huh?
Smart folks from the Philippines.
Yeah. So welcome to the Philippines.
Hi, Jana.
Hi, Jana. Glad to see you. I also want to recognize we have chaplains across the United States from our nonprofit that we have trained, and we got a very large contingent out on the East Coast. So I want to say hi to all of our chaplains out there in Maryland and Pennsylvania area that are online as well. Okay. So the next question is, we'd like to find out how you heard about this event. So if you can please just tag here where you heard it. And for those of you that are here in the classroom, where did you guys hear about this? Was it through Grace or through pastors, or how did that work? Grace? Okay. Are you all students here? Okay. Yeah? Perspective? Well, yeah. Good. Very helpful. So you can see we saw most of the people came through the social media and through email. A few came through other. So that's good. Thank you. Okay. Let me just back up. I went too quickly here. So what I'd like to know, for those of you that are online, as I'm talking with the people here in the classroom, what are your expectations? What do you hope to get out of being here tonight? There's a reason or something that brought you here. So why don't you just share with me briefly, why are you here? What is it you hope to get?
Is that on
Mm-hmm.
fill in the blank?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for those of you that are online, you'll see a box. You can just fill in the blank to capture that information. So may I ask, would somebody like to share here that's here live? Why are you here? What would you hope to get out of today?
I work full time for the church.
Okay.
I work with the middle schoolers and high schoolers.
Okay.
And I have a high school son.
Okay.
And recently in the Woodlands, there's the suicides.
Okay.
I thought it is really important that I'm aware
Okay.
of how you spot one, I suppose.
Okay, so awareness with youth, schools, stuff. Okay, very good. Anybody else? What brought you here tonight?
I was interested because, or I am interested because the suicide cases have been rising lately
Okay.
throughout nationwide.
Okay.
And we have teenagers
Okay.
and would like to be more prepared on how to talk to them about that.
Okay.
Get more familiar with the topic. And also we serve in a Hispanic ministry at church,
Okay.
Woods Edge, and we work with people, so we want to be equipped
Okay.
to be able to help others.
Okay, so I heard again, working with youth, becoming more aware, working within your ministry to learn skills to be able to deal with the issue around suicide. Anything else that we can add to that list that hasn't already been stated?
In my case, I would like to recognize at first view any of the symptoms in a person. For example, see if that person needs is showing
Sure.
symptoms of the trying to take his life.
Okay.
You know, I mean,
So,
to me it will be really important to
okay.
recognize that.
Okay. Very good. So some of the things that we have online is increased knowledge on how to respond to those possibly contemplating. As a Christian and suicide loss survivor, I want to learn how to help others who've experienced this type of tragedy. What are some of the key words to say that will help with the elderly? To learn to counsel people who've had suicidal tendencies, knowledge from ministry, and learn about how to help people who are suicidal. Just more aware of the topic itself. Okay, so that kind of helps us to gain an understanding of who's here and the reasons why they're here. So when we look at this particular class, there's a lot of curiosity and there's also a lot of stigma around suicide as a topic and stuff. Some of you may have people that you might consider to be at risk of suicide. Some we found out here in the expectations, there were some people that are also survivors and have lost other loved ones. You might be concerned about yourself, about some loved ones and things of that nature. So what this program is about is to help to provide an awareness level around suicide and just be able to talk about it, which is one of the reasons why we had the topic of should we talk about suicide, because there's a stigma that's out there that people don't want to bring it up, and they miss it, they can dismiss it, or they avoid the topic entirely because what happens if somebody says something that's affirmative? Now what do you do? How do you move forward with that? So this course is not going to address what we're going to do with those people. Okay, it's just going to start the process of talking about suicide in some of the areas just to become aware of it. As we go on with further training, the Safe Talk class that I mentioned would be the next level of training, and that will equip you to be able to recognize somebody who is suicidal, know how to talk with them, and be able to connect them to somebody who would do an intervention. Okay, that's Safe Talk. The class after that is Assist, which is how you actually do the intervention. Okay, and that's the class that we're having to teach next month on February 22nd, 23rd. So this class is going to be talking about and revisiting should we talk about suicide. It's going to be talking about a lot of the different things that this question can respond to. So what I'd like to do is ask you the question, should we talk about suicide? What do you think? Why do you think that? For those of you that are online, you can fill the box in here. Should we be talking about suicide?
Absolutely, it's very relevant.
Okay.
There's a lot of depression, a lot of oppression.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay. Could you elaborate? Why should we be talking about it?
I think it creates awareness.
Okay.
Those who, and as we talk more, and then those who are maybe contemplating suicide, they might feel okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who understand it's not a stigma. I can't voice, that's what I think.
Yeah. So is suicide happening around us?
Yes.
Yeah, but how often do we actually talk about it and bring it up as a topic of discussion? We don't. Why is that?
Because it's it's embarrassing.
Okay.
Maybe because we think that, I mean, it can happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'll happen to somebody else, but not to us.
Yeah.
That's not. I mean, that's not true. I mean, it's always there.
So who can we say has the potential of thinking about suicide? Just one segment of the population? Everyone, right? How many of you have ever had CPR training? Okay. How many of you actually performed CPR? Just a few. Okay. So let me ask you the question: why do we do CPR training? To prepare, right? Because there could be a potential. Where might somebody have a need for CPR? Anywhere, right? So just like we do training for CPR, we also want to create a community that's suicide safer, okay? That has a community of individuals that can do, let's say, suicide first aid, right? To be ready, willing, and able to provide life-sustaining and life-promoting and life-affirming skills to be able to help those people that are contemplating suicide or are on the path of having that happen. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So there's a number of reasons. And if you look at the statistics, I'm new to Houston, so I don't know the stats. I just moved here from California just a little while ago, and I've been told it's fairly high. You know, and we look at all the different issues of what's been happening with the storm and the hurricane and everything else. People are losing a lot of stuff, and a lot of life, a lot of property, a lot of relationships are being broken. And it's not just those major disasters, but there's crises that can happen in everybody's life that can cause them to start down this path. So we need to be open to having an awareness and being able to talk openly, honestly, and directly to this issue. Because the assumption in any type of suicide intervention program is a person wants to live, right? And we need to be able to come alongside them and have the comfort level to go to a very dark place, right? And be able to help that person to process through it. So we see topics on here that it should stop a potential suicide and start conversations. It's talking about it might help someone that has had these thoughts. It's important for people to know that they can get help and to have others to support them. Just because it's an uncomfortable topic, it should not be avoided. There's lots of things I would agree with on that. So let me ask you this question. Can you imagine that someone might answer differently from the way that you responded? Yeah, they could. Because everybody's coming with their own life experiences and their own perspective on how to deal with things. So we also need to be able to how to talk with others in this community that we're trying to build so that we're able to network and kind of have a net, if you will, to be able to catch people in and to be able to help them to process through their issues. So developing not just to be there for other people, but also the network amongst ourselves to be able to process. Okay? I'm going to skip this next couple of slides here. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that one. So the first step towards helping people talk about suicide is we need to talk about suicide, right? So we're going to call ourselves suicide talkers, if you will. And also helping to find other people that are willing to talk about it. So do you have any ideas why people might avoid directly talking about suicide? What are some? Shame. Okay. What else?
Your overreaction by the other person.
Overreaction. What might some of those reactions look like that would cause somebody not to want to talk directly?
Maybe, panic or, oh my gosh, or
minimizing what you're struggling with.
Yes.
I mean, especially for over spiritualizing, or you're not saved enough, or you don't trust God enough. I mean, there's so many things that people say that are not very caring or compassionate. So
Yes.
people don't think that they'll understand.
Yeah, so
I'll pray for you,
Yeah.
and, you know, just keep praying, you know,
Mhm.
God can work
Work through it.
this, and, I've even heard some people say, well, you know, it's a sin, just like
Yes.
any sin, confess
Mhm.
it to God, and,
Mhm.
and, you know, people thinking that you won't understand where they're coming from,
Okay.
and I think sometimes a preamble to talking about suicide would be beneficial, you know, finding out how the person feels. Because a lot of people don't just come up and say, I'm thinking about suicide. You know, a lot
Mhm.
of people talk about other things, you know, hints
Right.
that give you an idea that thought is in the back of their head.
Right.
And to give them an opportunity to express themselves and get to that point with them.
That means that we got to be willing to be attentive listeners,
Listeners, yeah.
not speakers, right? And that's a very important skill for us to gather. And it's one of the things that we talk about in the assist classes. So some of the responses on why people might avoid talking directly that we got online is they're scared on how people might react. It's taboo. They may feel like they're being judged, thinking that the other person might be embarrassed, that you thought they might even be considering it. They're battling with hurts and think others really do not care. Or as Raylene had indicated, they're saying things to them that just shuts them totally down. So we need to be observant of how we're reacting with people when we hear that, and learning enough about what the signs might be to be able to come alongside that person and help them to appropriately process through it. And they're not going to be very direct a lot of times. I mean, we don't want people to attempt suicide, but if they were, I'd rather them be really direct with me. But that's not how it's going to happen, right? It's going to be more subtle sometimes. So we need to be able to be listening to that. Sir?
I think sometimes in dealing with parents, with children who are expressing it, or even adults who are expressing to a spouse or a parent or someone, you know, they're very close to, that they are having these problems, there's a tendency for the spouse or the parent to start feeling guilty. Like, oh, what have I done
It's not
wrong?
about you.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not about you actually
Right.
at this moment, but
Yeah.
you tend to think that it's about us at that moment. You're right.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that's like a really negative thing I think that can happen if someone is willing to open up enough to you, and then the other person say, oh my gosh, you know, what have I done wrong? And
Absolutely.
it's really not about the other person at that point. It's all about,
It's about what they're dealing with.
Right. Absolutely.
Another big fear is, what you're in the same level is, fear of hurting that person. If, for example, if it is one of your children is kind of is ashamed to tell you because they don't want you to think it's about them. And at that time, it truly isn't about you; it's about them. And so they want to be heard. Well, number one, and so and I think that's another shame thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the principles I like to always try to keep in the back of my head is we need to become water to someone else's shoreline, because it's not about us, it's about the other person. What do they need from us to be able to keep themselves safe for now? Okay, and this is some of the things that we will continue to be building on as we go through some of these other sessions and stuff. So some people are not sure that they really want to talk directly about suicide. Okay, and this S with the star is standing for the suicide word. They have reasons for avoiding it. And sometimes they just practice avoidance without knowing consciously why they are doing it. Okay, they're not even aware that they're avoiding talking about it. It's just because of the taboo and the way society is, it's difficult for them to be, there needs to be a relationship really in place. Okay, so if you are coming across, we've had some people that are in here that says, I'm dealing with students in school. Okay, so being able to not have a wall up that students are not willing to come to you, that they can trust you, okay? That means that we need to be really good at developing rapport and relationship, that there's nothing that they can't come to us about, okay? And if somebody does come to us and we think it's there, we need to be able to ask the question, and it's a difficult thing to ask the question, are you thinking of killing yourself? Are you thinking of suicide? Okay, so that's something that we need to work on ourselves, but the key here is allowing that connection to occur, to the development of the relationship.
Is it always so transparent though, sir? Because a lot of times people are giving you hints because they're not really sure that that's what they're feeling. I mean, especially when you're dealing with depression and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when you were saying about really, really listening.
Right.
Because a lot of times they're not gonna just come. They may not come out and just say that this is what they're feeling.
Right.
But they're giving you all the signs. And so
Yeah.
you really have to be cognizant of the signs.
Suicide is multifaceted. Okay, there's many different components to it. It's like looking at the facets of a diamond. Okay, it's all the different facets that creates the brilliance in the diamond. Okay, so there's many different pathways of why somebody might be thinking about it, and being able to identify what those symptoms would be, if you want to use that terminology, and then putting them all together. It's not just one thing. Okay, it's a bunch of different things that can cause that. But you're right. It would be, as we just talked about, nice if we could be really direct, and they could be direct with us. But it's a hard topic, and people aren't willing to necessarily open up and be very direct about it. And it also has to deal with our relationship with that person and their life experiences. Because we, based upon who we are and what we're bringing, could miss the symptoms. We could dismiss it, or we could avoid it because we don't know how to deal with it, or we don't want to deal with it. So it's on both sides of this equation here. But what we need to do is do exactly this. We need to shatter the secrecy around suicide. We need to be able to be very direct about it. You know, it's like putting up a sign around us saying, I'm safe. It's okay for you to come talk to me about this. You know, I'm not going to judge you. I want to hear why you're thinking about this. And be able to have somebody that is going to be able to talk about their thoughts with you is a good thing for their sake. So if we want people to come to us when they need to talk about or want help with suicide, we need to practice becoming suicide talkers, okay? We need to be able to discuss the topic. We just need to be thoughtful about it. We need to be open. We need to be able to use the word suicide in a sentence and stuff. We don't want to talk about suicide even if you need to talk about it. You know, another thing that we want to look at is, you know, we got a blank slide up here, and sometimes community awareness is as blank as this slide. Okay? So we have to be able to bring this information out into the community and empower the community to be willing to talk about this. When was the last time in our churches you heard your pastor talk about the issue of suicide? Have you ever heard of a pastor talking on that? But is there a potential that it's going on inside the church? That people are having these thoughts? You know, I could say the same thing on a lot of different things. Domestic violence. Is domestic violence happening out in the community? Yeah. Is it maybe happening inside of our churches? Yeah. Are drugs happening out in our community? Yeah. Is it possibly happening inside of our churches? Yeah. All of these topics are things that we can be addressing, but we have to be willing to go there, you know, to be able to develop the skill sets in order to deal with these issues. So this picture here, and now I'm locking up. That's not good. Not a good thing. Sorry for the technical glitch here. Well, while this is coming up, if you look at our relationships, when one person is impacted, is it just that one person that's impacted? Or are there many other people that are impacted also as a result of any issue?
Many other people.
Many other people. So everybody that's attached to the person, here we go, it has an impact upon them, okay, in a physical, emotional, cognitive, spiritual, and behavioral way. So what this slide is trying to illustrate is the number of completed suicides in a year. And when we look at this from this particular resolution, the number of suicides seems to be scattered, right, and hardly noticeable. You can't really make out what you're looking at, okay? But that number is more or less equal to all the people dying from traffic accidents and far exceeds the number dying from homicide, okay? On a world scale, it's more than all the people dying in all the armed conflicts going on in the world in any given year. In the United States, the latest statistics is around 40,000 people or so a year. Now, each one of those people are connected to other people. So as we start to gain in more and more resolution and get more clarity, for every one suicide, there's about 40 to 100 people that have suicidal behavior. Okay? The picture's starting to get a lot clearer, but that's way too many people. As we start to get even clearer, 1 in every 17 people, which is between 5 and 7% of the population, think about completing suicide each year. Okay? So our awareness of suicide as a serious community problem is starting to come more and more into focus. How many people are affected by every single suicidal act? That's the question that this slide is showing. So at this resolution, we're only envisioning one group being impacted, but the impact is so much larger, so much larger. So let's take a quick census here. For those of you that are online, I'd like you to respond and check all that apply here. I know someone who died or might have died by suicide, injured themselves with suicide in mind, has or had thoughts of suicide, is or has personally been impacted by suicide. So while they're responding online, how about the people here in the classroom? How many people may have known somebody who died by suicide? Okay, it's 2 or 3 here. How about injured themselves with suicide in mind? Okay. Or somebody may have had thoughts of suicide. Maybe had been personally impacted by suicide. Okay. So that's just going on here in this small microcosm and the 27 or so people that are participating with us online. You could look at the statistics that are here. That's a lot. 58% of the people online know someone who died or might have died by suicide. That's a lot of people, okay? That's a lot of people, okay? So if we look at this room full of people, you know, it's just going to continue to add up. You know, and what we need to do is we need to become suicide aware so that we're able to actually talk about the subject. And when we are talking with people about the subject, to make the community aware of this so that we can actually do something about it, we then need to take things to the next level and start to get training on suicide first aid. Okay, and that's where the SAFE talk would be, to help to start identify people that have expressed or shown things that might imply that they're suicidal, and be able simply to get them the help that they need. Okay, that's very low level, the next step. So there's two sides to this equation. There's one side that is the person that has the thoughts, and there's the other side of the person that said, should I ask? Because I'm seeing things. Okay, so both have an issue that they need to be able to address and be able to talk about. What might be some of the things that the person that's at risk, we're going to call that person the person at risk, and the person that's asking, we're going to call them the caregiver. Okay, so the person at risk, what might be some of the things that they're thinking about, should they tell somebody else about suicide? What might be some of the things that are going through their head?
Interesting enough is that someone was trying to stop them. It's not me. And, you know, we want to think that they all want to be saved, but not everybody want to be saved, even though we believe that they should be. But a lot of them don't want to be saved, and so I don't want to tell anybody.
Okay,
I've heard that a lot.
okay.
So what was the question again?
The person that's at risk is asking themselves a question, should I tell somebody else about suicide? So what might be some of the thinking or thoughts that they have that person at risk has?
They're thinking, I'm in a box, there's no way out.
Right.
The only solution is, it's kind of like, what was that movie? It's a Wonderful Life?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's better, everybody else is better off without me.
Okay,
That's what they're
okay. So there, I'm sorry, were you going to say something? No, okay. So there are things that are happening in their life that they think that suicide might be the only way for them to deal with the issue, right? That's what we're hearing from here. What about the person that is observing them? And they're thinking in their head, should I ask about suicide? What might be going through their mind?
Am I picking up the right signs?
Mm-hmm. Am I picking up the right signs?
Or
What else?
Could you point them at, are you giving them an out? Because when you bring the subject up, then, and they may have really not thought about it, then maybe that'll lead them to that direction. You know, a lot of people don't talk about things because they're afraid to face
Yeah.
reality.
So what you're bringing up right now is a myth. If I bring it up, does that mean I'm putting it in their head to do it? That's actually a myth.
That is a myth.
That is not.
But it kind of goes through our minds.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I want you to note the in your exploration worksheet. Reference the notes section that you have there in the back. Okay, because suicide talk, the talk stands for something. Talk is saying I need to tell. So who is that referencing? The person at risk or the caregiver? Person at risk. So what do they need to tell? What do you think they need to talk about?
Their feelings.
Feelings? Okay. What else? How about I need to openly tell someone about my thoughts? Right? That's the T. I would like to tell several people because I'm not going to have one person that's always going to be around. So I want to tell as many as I can. And I'm aware that I may be cautious in saying it as openly as I want to. And I'm going to be watching for people's reactions. Right? That's the person at risk. Okay? Now, I need someone to ask. Right? So once I have given you any reason to think that I might be thinking about suicide, please ask me exactly about suicide. Okay? And I want you to be clear and direct. And right now, that's exactly what I want you to do. Because when we look at suicide intervention, implicit in suicide intervention is the person really wants to live. But they are so overwhelmed with life thinking that suicide is the only way. And as they're going through and everybody is missing what's going on in their life, or they're dismissing what they think might be present or actually avoiding it, they're getting more and more isolated. So all of a sudden, if you were to come along and you were to notice that this person is in pain and you're willing to go to that dark place and ask clearly and directly, what do you think is going on in their head? What's their thought? Finally, somebody is listening. Finally, somebody is willing to ask me the question. Because I really, implicit, I want to live, but I'm in so much pain I don't know what to do right now. Life is crushing me. And I think the only way out is to deal with suicide. Okay?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Recently, two of my children told me that there is this song and they showed it to me, and it's called something like it has like the name of the song is a 1-800 number, 1-800-suicide or something like that. And the song it's a rapper and it says I don't want to die.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they don't really want to die, but maybe that's the only option they see at that moment.
What's happening, without getting too much into it, is they are being so overwhelmed in so many different facets of their life that they're not able to process how to deal with the situation. They're under a lot of stress. So if we're able to help them by coming alongside them and walking with them in an empathetic way, in a way that is able to connect with them, to develop a relationship, that they know that we're listening, that we can understand, we can end up helping to assist them towards pathways of living. Okay? And that's what they need us to do. And it's understanding and learning about that process that will help them with the actual intervention and stuff. Does that make sense? Okay. So, if I was to say, I recently lost a loved one, and I'm showing all kinds of distress, okay? And imagine that you are concerned about me possibly having thoughts of suicide. How would you ask me in a respectful, caring, and direct way? What would that look like for those of you that are here in the classroom?
Approach it tangentially. Just, hey, I've noticed you seem to have something on your mind. You want to talk about it.
Okay. Great response. Awesome. How about another one?
Well, this week, or last week, I think I told you my uncle died. He was 98.
Mm-hmm.
So I just called my cousin. And my father died 2 years ago, so she called me and just said to me, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
So I just called her and said, how are things going?
Should you?
Just let her, an open-ended question.
Sure.
It's just an open, let her talk.
Right. So there's not any one way of doing this, right? But the key would be to be respectful and caring and loving and direct, okay? We will give more skills on actually how to do that. You got it? Okay. So the L means, yes, please.
When people ask a question that you
Repeat the question?
so
Okay.
that everyone can hear.
Sure, thank you. So when we look at the L, we're talking about listening, And Dr. Letting already mentioned about open-ended questions, okay, not closed. A closed question is like an answer would be yes, no, true, false, okay? An open-ended question will be like, how are you holding up? Okay, something that they have, that you can pull out dialogue from that person. That's part of what's called active listening. It's a communication skill. And we talk extensively in some of our other classes with regard to that. I hope you will listen to what I need to say, not what you might like me to say. That's a good point, right? Because it's what the person at risk needs to be talking about, not what we would like them to talk about, okay? I've not really talked to anyone about suicide before because it's such a taboo subject. It's hard to talk about. So I need to clear my thoughts also by talking through them and having somebody who's willing to listen to let me process. I'm an extrovert, and the way I process is talking with other people, and my thoughts, I have to hear my thoughts by speaking them and then processing them with somebody else to cement them. If you have somebody who's introverted, they take about 7 to 10 seconds to think about what they're going to think about before they speak. So if we're talking over them, or we're thinking in our mind about what we're going to say next without first having listened to them, we're short-circuiting their thinking process, and there's going to be a wall that's going to come up, and they're not going to be able to get the help that they need because they're going to shut us out. Okay? So listening is a very important skill that we need to be able to get.
Is there a struggle with the tendency to make people understand that you understand them, and so you start going into your own personal story, and so so you're really not listening because you spend more time telling your story, and they're like, you kind of get what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're talking, I would call that personal disclosure.
Exactly.
Okay? How much personal disclosure is good or not good to use has to deal with the relationship that you have with that person or that you have developed. Sometimes it's a good thing, other times it's not. And stuff. But the principle that exists, it's not about us. It's about them. It's about their pain. It's about being willing to come alongside them and be willing. The way I in our chaplain classes and stuff, I use an illustration of when somebody is in pain, we artificially scaffold them, okay? And everything that's inside here is chaos, okay? Everything that's inside here is what I call a pit. Now, how deep that person goes into the pit and how long they stay in the pit, there's a whole bunch of different things that make that up based on the person, okay? This artificial scaffolding would be our interventions. It's the things that we're going to do to shore up their foundation, okay? And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to scaffold them because we don't want them to hurt themselves. We don't want them to hurt other people. And we don't want other people to hurt them. So we want to provide this empathetic, caring, respectful, protective environment for them and empower them to come shallow from out of the pit and to compress the time that they're in the pit. Okay? And the way we do that is we're going to turn with them and we're going to walk alongside of them in an empathetic way, and we're going to empower them to take back control with the goal of being able to release them and restore them, or to get them more care that they might need to still process over and above what we're able to provide to them. Does that make sense? That's the principle of how we want to do things. So as we're listening to that individual, we need to be willing as caregivers to go to a dark place because we don't know how deep they're going to be in the pit. And they're going to be talking about some very dark issues. And we got to be willing to allow that to occur. The way I like to think about it is I allow people to verbally throw up on me in order to get the pain. Or another way of looking at it is there's a quote-unquote poison within them, and the antidote is listening, letting the pain come out. And the way we get the pain out is through good active listening and through open-ended questions to allow them to process and to talk with somebody else in a safe way that can help them to process the pain on what their next steps would be, which takes us to this next step, which is keeping themselves safe, okay? And just like we're scaffolding them, they're in the pit, we're going to be walking with them to empower them to gain back control of their life, that the pressures of life has so overwhelmed them that they don't realize that they can actually process what to do. We want to empower them to keep themselves safe for now, okay? So they may or may not know what to do or how to do that or who they can go to, Okay? So one of the handouts that you have there is a community helper list. Okay? And if you look at that, that's a list of people that you want to be able to recognize can be helpers, because when somebody is suicidal, there's many different events that could trigger them to be able to think through that process, that that's what they want to do. So we need to have resources available to come alongside them and help them to be able to get the help that they need. So those are some people that you want to consider having as your helpers. Okay? So the bottom line is we need to tell somebody about their thoughts of suicide. I need someone to ask me about my thoughts. I need someone to listen to my thoughts. And I need help keeping myself safe from suicide. That's what the talk means. Okay? Just talking about suicide talk. So the question then is, do you believe, that these cares and these needs can be met? What do you think? Can they be met? Can we be the people that somebody wants to come and tell us about their thoughts? Can we be that person? Can we be the person that has learned how to ask the question? Yeah, we can. Are we the people that are willing to listen to somebody go to a dark place and listen to their thoughts and feelings? Yeah. Can we be the people that are willing to help provide resources to keep them safe for now? Yeah, so how would you answer this question? I would say yes, we can, right? Okay. So we look at neighbors, medical supports, responsibility, hope, faith, financial security, health, things to do in the future, friends, hobbies, recreation. These are things that promote life, right? Because right now, when somebody's down here in this pit, are they looking at these types of things, or are they somewhere else?
Somewhere else.
They're somewhere else, right? So if we look at this last page here of the explorations sheet, I want you to look at this picture. I could make better use of my life-sustaining things by... I want you to reflect on that for a couple minutes. And I want you to look at the back of that sheet at the top. Okay? And for those of you that are online, I'd like you to look over this table that's here on suicide prevention activities. And what I'd like you to do is to read through some of these, and those that you are willing or that you would like to do, go ahead and mark them. So some of these, for those that don't have the handouts or aren't online, is practicing reframing the circumstances in positive ways. That's one thing that we could do for suicide prevention. Tell others what signs you might show if you were in trouble. Practice caring to help when needed. Volunteer to tell your story about suicide. Tell others that you're a resource. Promote professional development. Talk about barriers and bridges to the use of multiple resources. Sponsor, organize a training. Work with leaders to make improvements in policy and practices. So there's any number of things that we could do to help the communities that we are involved with to become more suicide aware and be willing to talk about the issues. So we can provide training within our spheres of influence, if you will. And that's part of the reason why we're so excited about our collaboration with Grace within the faith-based community, because the actual practical training of actually doing not just this intervention, but others dealing with other issues and topics on stuff like crisis intervention and critical incident stress management and other things. We're actually going to be providing that training here, helping churches to be able to create chaplaincy programs within their church for response to the body as well as response into the community. All of those types of things can be done, but it's just an awareness level. It's just helping people to make them aware that these types of things are possible, and then equipping people with the skill sets that they need. So, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think? Is it a good idea to spend time with people and to help them to have life-sustaining things going on in their lives? Will that prevent them having suicidal thoughts? Can it help prevent that? Yeah. So what types of things within your spheres of influence, whether it's at schools or churches or different ministries, are things that are life promoting that you could tie in with this?
Well, at church we have small groups.
Small groups. Okay.
Something that, the goal is to get together and talk about what we need, our needs, what we're feeling.
Okay.
Where it hurts. That is,
Okay.
something that is helpful.
So pushing care down into the small group ministry in the church. Maybe looking at from suicide prevention within the church as an example, creating small group leaders and getting them trained on how to deal with different issues or topics and give them the skill sets or the resources that they need to be able to deal with these issues. That could be life promoting. Can we let the community know outside of our churches that there's these resources inside? Yeah. There's a lot of things we can do. We had a chaplain couple at the church I was at in California that we had a 13-week program on loss, crisis, grief, and trauma for a grief support group that we use inside the church, but we also advertise outside into the community for people to be able to come to the church to receive those types of resources. So somebody who has lost a loved one in an elderly group, we have people that lose relationships or they lose a job or just any number of things that causes loss can lead somebody potentially down a pathway, their reactions, the different groups that they belong to, and other things of that nature.
I think one thing that can be helpful is I think of in a church setting, there are a lot of talents in a church setting, and many and skills that people have professionally, and some people think, well, I happen to be a lawyer, and I've dealt with some people in the church who have just thought that there's no way that they could overcome a certain legal problem, and that was going to ruin the rest of their lives, and it was leading them down a very bad path. And with the right help, they found out that there was an end to the tunnel. I mean, there was a solution.
Mm-hmm.
They could be helped, and and that they could afford it. And their insurance agents have been able to provide that, letting people know that there was insurance coverage available that they didn't know was available, and things that you wouldn't necessarily think of. CPAs, helping out with tax issues that that people were just overwhelmed with, and people within the church professionally had, not a problem. We can do this, we can do that. It can be dealt with. And many times people think that there are pro bono organizations within the community that deal with things like that, and I know from a legal standpoint that those pro bono organizations are very lacking. I mean, they meet a certain need, but there are many others who fall through the cracks with that, and so sometimes people's problems can be not so overwhelming as
Right.
someone who has some technical expertise,
Right.
professional expertise, knows what the problem is.
Right. And that's why we need to build a community that's suicide safer and suicide aware, where everybody is ready, willing, and able to provide suicide first aid stuff. So, and all of you can be part of helping that to happen here in the Houston area. And where you guys are at online is bringing this type of information and knowledge that's provided. We can bring this anywhere in the country. And with our technology, we can do this online for a lot of stuff. But some of these interventions, you have to actually physically be present to learn, because you're actually doing the interventions and stuff. So you have to do that face to face.
In
Raylene.
our church, we're a really large church, and we have brief share and all those different ministries. But what we find, many of us ministers are finding is that a lot of people believe it doesn't apply to them. And so it is very important that us as ministers are guiding people to the different groups. Because a lot of people see, just like you were saying about, there's, people are equipped, but a lot of times people aren't revealing, so we have to constantly publicize that we have these organizations, that these places are here for you to get those help, and not be afraid to say it for whatever reason it is. I remember when we first started advertising in the church that we had these programs, they kept saying, why are you advertising it? You're putting it in people's faces. But if you don't tell people you have these resources, they're not going to be able to utilize it. And that's one of the biggest things that I said, so we as, ministers, we're constantly, we're trying to point people to, okay, it's going through divorce. You need divorce care. Or, or you need this. Whatever your situation is, you got to be able to know what the resources are. Right,
absolutely. And, I believe scripturally that we have everything we need unto life and godliness. And the scripture addresses all issues. But let me ask you this question. Have you ever known somebody who had an anxious thought? And I would go to Philippians 4, right? But the anxious thought was so bad it made them physically sick to their stomach. Right? Did that anxious thought, that emotion, which caused a cognitive thing or a physical thing to happen, did it change the way that they started to think about life? So now we have a cognitive, right? Did it change how they behaved? I guarantee you there's a spiritual component in that. Okay? So here we had an emotion that caused a physical manifestation, that caused a cognitive issue to change their behavior with a spiritual component. God created us as a whole person, physical, emotional, cognitive, behavioral, and spiritual. And we need to deal with the entire person, right? And I know a lot of times I'll go to training at churches and they're very strong on what the scripture says. And I'm there, right? But we also need to take care of the rest of the person, not exclude the rest of the person, okay? And every time one person is impacted with any type of crisis or trauma, think about like an equalizer. Everybody has their own waveform, if you will. And there's 5 bands on everybody's equalizer. When a crisis happens, somebody's come in and they kind of mess their bands up, right? And now they're trying to reorganize their life. What just happened to me, okay? Not just with that one person with those 5 domains, but every single relationship that's attached to that person, they are also impacted. So there's this ripple effect, and they're all impacted also in those 5 domains. There's not enough of us. We need to be working together as a community to be able to address all the needs of people that are in crisis. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So when we look at the exercise on page 3 at the bottom, we need to walk the talk. We need to work at living and keeping safe. We need to be able to let people tell us what's going on inside, being willing to ask the question, being able to listen to them and helping them to process, and then helping them to keep themselves safe for now and providing those resources. Okay? So the real question becomes, do you want to be that person that walks the talk? A week from now, on that day you look at this table of suicide prevention activities that's up here. And I thought about other things that maybe aren't on the list. Maybe there's some things that aren't on there that you'd like to add. What would you say to yourself if this was a week from today and you were to look at that table? Have you implemented any of this to walk the talk? Just think, not looking for an answer, I just want you to process that. Okay? Because there are things that you could do to help to start to build a suicide safer community. You know, one of those things is what you see here. This is what we talk about, safe talk. So the person that's in orange is the person that is at risk. They're thinking about suicide. The person that is in yellow, or if you will, is the person that is trained in safe talk to be able to listen to that person and then get them to the help that they need to get the actual intervention done. And that's the assist trained person, applied suicide intervention skills training. Assist is the international, well, all of this is the international standard for suicide intervention. This is in the Suicide Practice Best Practice Registry. There's been over 1 million people worldwide that have been trained in this. Okay, it is countries use this, states use this. I know in California they just had a law passed. It was AB 2246 that all the school systems, all the teachers have to be trained on suicide intervention. Okay, and there's some stuff coming down the road as well with clinicians and mental health professionals as well. So there are going to be some additional handouts that the feedback form that you have here, if you fill that out, we're going to be able to provide some handouts for you. And for those of you that are online, I need you to, and the information's in the packet, but to send your feedback forms into me, and we're going to provide you a certificate of completion, which kind of looks like this here. And the certificate of completion, this is from Living Works. I'm a trainer for them with their programs. This is internationally recognized. And also some additional handouts that we'll be able to email to you on learning about suicide alertness skills, different programs for suicide safer community. And for those of you that are here, I have a pamphlet to give you also on the different programs that you could take with you. There's also in the thing an intervention handbook that you can order if you care to. And here's some additional handouts that we'll also be able to send when you send in your feedback form and you fill it in, that you could take with you in order to utilize that at your churches or ministries and stuff also. So in closing, our next training that we're going to have here is going to be here on February 22nd and 3rd. And if you go online to Grace, we're going to be advertising it through here. And if you signed up before, or you want to go to our website, you go to careforce.us, is another shorthand one, and then click on National Center for Chaplain Development, and then click on classes, and you can see our whole listing. And if you didn't register and you want us to email you the information that you're here in the class, you can go ahead and put your email down and we'll make sure you get that information as well. Okay. Here's some of our other websites. All the classes that you see inside our catalog, you can download that from our website, is what we're going to be embedding into an accredited program here at Grace. CareForce is made up of 3 organizations: National Center for Chaplain Development, which has been around for well over a decade, and it provides education and training and curriculum development. Christian Crisis Care, which is actually going to be our free topic next month, and we'll get the dates out to you, is helping churches to set up crisis response and chaplain programs within the church. And then CALEC is the California Law Enforcement Chaplain Consortium. I wrote the course for law enforcement chaplaincy for the state of California that has trained probably over 1,000 law enforcement patrol chaplains for the state. Okay, so last things, you already know that. We'd like to find out from you, for those of you that are online, your interest in more training, whether it's non-degree seeking, undergraduate, or graduate school. The programs that we're submitting for accreditation, we're going to have next week. And again, we're anticipating that we'll start teaching in the summer. We have a 19-credit certificate in chaplaincy. We have a 45-credit Master of Arts in Public Community and Public Safety chaplaincy. And we have a 75-credit course in military chaplaincy. Down the road, we're going to also be implementing some Masters of Divinities programs in public safety, military, and hospital-based chaplaincy as well. So a lot of the training that we're going to be doing is practical, skill-based training to equip you with different interventions, and also talking about the different issues that surface based upon the context that you're serving in. So 44% of the people that are online at this time, there's 23 people, want to take graduate class degrees. 25% of the 23 people want undergrad, and 31% are not seeking a degree, but just want it for ministry purposes or for their own self-education. Just out of curiosity, for those that are interested in chaplaincy, what percentage are looking to have accredited classes that are community, public safety, or military based? And for those of you that have taken any training with our organization in the past, we're going to be creating a pathway for you to add the contact hours to the classwork that you already have taken with us in order to make up the amount of information that you need in order to get credit for the degree program. So 83%, 84% of the 22 participants now are interested in community-based chaplaincy. Okay. So the best way to stay informed is to go on our Facebook accounts. They're listed here with Grace, and also with CareForce is right now just set up under mine. So if you could like those pages, careforce.us, you can go there to gather more information. And if you look at the bottom there on bit.ly/CareForceUS, that will take you to our upcoming class page. So you could see the live classes that we'll be doing here at Grace. And that's about it. So do we have any questions from the group that you'd like to discuss now? If you're online and you have a question and you haven't used Blue Jeans, hold your space bar down to talk. And when you're done saying what you want to say, release it. So it's a push to talk if you want to communicate, because right now we have everybody on mute. So any questions? Okay. Well, if you all would please get your feedback forms in to me, I'll be able to send you out your certificates and your handouts. And otherwise, I thank you for taking the time to be part of this training to help us here in Houston and wherever you're at, anywhere in the world, to be able to design or to help develop a suicide-safer community that's ready, willing, and able to help people with suicide first aid. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess I have
Sure.
one question, and you may have mentioned something about subsequent sessions.
Yes.
I came in a few minutes late. But at what dealing with someone who is suicidal,
Yes.
at what point, I mean, who should you go to if you need, if you think the person is really serious about it and they need more than just someone to talk to?
Yes.
You know, you can't provide the structure, you know, that
Right.
cocoon that they need to keep them from doing it. When do you know who to go to, and who do you go to? If it's a kid, do you go to the parent?
Okay.
I mean, who do you go to?
Is there immediate? So the question is, who do you go to if somebody is suicidal? And the question I would ask you is it immediately evident that they're going to harm themselves?
If they're openly talking about it.
Okay, then I would call 911 at that point if it's immediate. Okay. And as you get further training, there's other things that you'd be able to do, but the first response is to call 911 and get them the help that they need.
Okay.
Okay? Good question. Any other questions? All right, thank you for your time.